This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 561 for June 17th of 2021. Talking Alfa Romeo, Carlos Tavares, and car sharing with Larry Dominique. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Magna.
Mr. V, how you be?
Good, John. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
Good. So, before the show started, for those who, people don't know, obviously, this isn't like the olden days when we would sometimes have the show before the show. We were talking about things like graphing calculators and things digital. And so I was going to quiz you today about a guy whose birthday, his 84th birthday is today. It's the guy who invented hypertext. So we won't go there, Ted Nelson. But I do have a technical question for it. It has to do with technology. Today is the 75th anniversary of this technology, and it has to do with automobiles, sort of. It's in the infotainment realm. Okay, 75 years ago today, something occurred for the very first time.
In the infotainment world? And it in cars or
in cars. This is a car question.
I'm going to guess the first radio went into a car, production car.
John. It was the first mobile phone call made in a car.
75 years ago.
75 years ago, Bell had developed a system. And there's a YouTube video on this. It is hilarious to watch. I mean, it is the classic, black and white, and here's a guy driving his truck. How would they reach this man who's in his truck? And they basically have two guys in the cab. There is a handset, okay, the classic black handset. And Bell came up with this idea. Basically what it was its FM signal went from your car. Then it went to the telephone wires, and then they show the telephone wires going around, and then it went to a central location where an operator would pick it up. And that was the start of in-car. And also in the trunk, they had to put in a transmitter, which is a giant box, and a receiver, which is another giant box. They had to put a larger battery under the hood and a new generator under the hood, and of course an antenna. But 75 years ago today.
Wow, that's something. Yeah.
Yes, so infotainment began.
That's good stuff.
So there you have it.
So I know we've been having technical difficulties getting some of the show set up. We're hoping to have Joe White from Reuters join us. Is he out there? And nope, not yet. So why don't we bring in our special guest for today, Larry Dominique from Stellantis, but actually as the head of Alfa Romeo North America. Larry, great to have you on the show.
Oh, great to be here, John. Always great to see you and Gary. And we've done several shows together with different roles, perhaps. So This is a really exciting one for me.
All right. So I told John I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do this backward anyway. So tell us about the role you have right now.
Yeah. So as of March 1st of this year, Gary, I was asked by Carlos and our new global head of Alfa Romeo, Jean-Philippe Imperardo, if I'd be willing to manage the Alfa Romeo brand in all of its aspects in North America, which includes Canada, the U.S., and Mexico for all three regions. And I at first wasn't sure, but when I look at the 111-year history of this historic brand, I got really excited. And the opportunity to kind of shepherd something that's so historic and so consistent is something you don't get to do very often. All
right. I don't want to, interrupt or call out my guest, but it's next week. You're 111 years old. June 24th.
That's true. Some days, Gary, it feels that, but not every day.
But let's talk a little bit about your background, because you're right. You've been on the show before, I believe, when you were running True Car and when you were doing product planning for Nissan. And fill us in a little bit before that. What were you doing in your career?
Yeah, so those of you who may not know me, my background started in Detroit, born and raised in the Detroit area. Went to school at Lawrence Tech, started my career at General Motors, worked there for almost 5 years, mostly in engineering at that time. Spent a year at the Willow Run assembly plant, pivoted to Chrysler back in the mid 80s, and became a quality engineer for a few years. So dove into supplier quality and quality activities. Had a young family, was traveling too much, jumped back into traditional engineering at Nissan, actually stayed at Nissan 22 years. And this is where you guys, I think, interacted with me the first time. Started out in engineering, spent a couple of stints down in Smyrna, Tennessee in manufacturing, pivoted to product planning. I think a lot of you guys know I worked on developing the first generation Xterra, was kind of the first product I ever worked on. And then ran product planning for North and South America from 2006 to 2011. And then I got asked by Scott Painter over at True Car. They had just purchased Automotive Lease Guide and asked if I'd come over and run Automotive Lease Guide, which I did for 5 years, which was a really interesting time in my career. I was able to step outside for a while, the myopic view of an OEM, and look at the whole industry as a whole, which I haven't really had a chance to do prior. And got to know kind of the good, the bad, the best practices of everybody out there. And then in end of 2015, I decided to kind of go off on my own, started my own consulting business. And about a month later, Carlos Tavares called me. And they were just about to launch the Push to Pass plan with PSA in globally. And part of that Push to Pass plan was re-entry to North American market. So Peugeot had left in 1991. Citroën had left earlier than that. And he asked me to help develop a strategy to bring one of those brands back to the North American market. And we had identified Peugeot at that time. And we spent 4 years focusing on how could we come back to the North American market in a more asset light way, kind of a lean organization, take advantage of the digital and e-commerce world that exists around us today, but still be aligned from a franchise compliancy point of view. So we did that up until the merger, the FCA PSA merger. At which time we decided with enough North American brands in our portfolio, we would focus on the existing brands we have. And some of them have been struggling, Maserati, Fiat, Alfa Romeo in particular, Chrysler to a certain degree. So we decided not to bring Peugeot over. And that's when the company asked me to pivot and say, hey, you've been coming up with some really cool, innovative ideas. How can we apply that to Alfa Romeo? So that's kind of where I got to where I am.
All right. So let me ask you something. And especially I think this might be interesting to our younger viewers, that you got your degree from Lawrence Tech in electrical engineering. Okay. Yep. Has that been helpful to you throughout your career?
Absolutely. One of the things you're taught in engineering school, Gary, is kind of a logical way of thinking, critical thinking, deductive reasoning, and using a lot of data at the same time. And it's benefited me as I've moved from engineering to manufacturing to quality to product planning. You always have this grounding in the way you think about problems, and look at data and ask questions. Now that provides this foundation, but I'll tell you what, I've learned so much over the years from, the marketers of the world and the planners of the world and the manufacturing people of the world that helps broaden that context, right? So the foundation there, and I do believe, I'm being a little bit selfish or biased here, but I think it's easier for engineers to branch out into other areas than vice versa, for sure.
Hey, I see we've got Joe White with us, but let's check out the technical issues. Joe, can you hear us and can we hear you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Whether you can hear me or see me is another question. We'll never know.
Yes. No, we know. We can see you.
Okay, good.
So,
good. Hi,
joining
Larry.
the conversation
Hi, Joe.
here. Larry, very interesting. You spent time at Automotive Lease Guide, which sets the residual values for vehicles. My understanding is Alfa Romeo in North America has seen a fairly substantial improvement in its residuals. Is that right? What can you tell us about that?
We have, absolutely. So with the launch about 5 years ago of Giulia, and then a year later, the Stelvio came to market, there's been a lot of work during that period of time, John, with identifying what you need to do to manage the residual values. I keep joking with Jean-Philippe and Carlos that if I don't get the residual values right, I've got a real problem, considering I ran ALG for a while. But it really is managing those behaviors between your pricing, your promotions, and your fleet penetration, right? I mean, we have basically no fleet penetration at all. Even pre-COVID, Alfa had basically no fleet penetration. So we're really trying to manage. We've been able to get strong residual values. The market today is abnormal, right? We're seeing across the board, used car values are going crazy everywhere for everybody. The real question for me is my brand, our segments run about 60 to 65% leasing. I'm running about 80% leasing today. So one of my key objectives that I've got for the team is we want to get down to the 60, 65% range. I just don't want to be over-indexed in leasing.
Larry, and apologize for being late, although it's not entirely my fault. I'm wondering what success in North America looks like for Alfa, and because I think, and I was looking this up, I think you sold about 18,000 plus last year. Looks like you're on track to do better than that this year, at least so far early. But what does success look like? Because you're in this really tough place, right? Sort of between mass market and premium.
Yep. Yeah. So when you say we're between mass market and premium, if you look at our current customer facing transaction prices, Joe, we're competitive with BMW and Mercedes and Audi across the board. So when I think about success, so if you look back over the history, when I say the short-term history, the last 5 or 6 years or 7 years with Alfa Romeo, the brand has struggled. Sergio, let him rest in peace. But when Sergio was here, he had laid certain groundworks and expectations from a dealer point of view, from a sales volume point of view. And a lot of those things never manifested. There was discussion, do we invest, do we not invest? We launched with some quality issues years ago. So the brand, where the brand wanted to be today versus where we are today are two very different locations, right?
Right.
One thing that's very clear is if a brand wants to be successful, first and foremost, it has to deliver customer satisfaction, and it has to deliver profitability for our network and for us. And this is where kind of the reset is happening with Alfa Romeo globally. So Jean-Philippe's job is to stabilize the ship on a global basis to make sure that we can invest in the future of Alfa Romeo. So we've done a lot of things this year that relative to the way we've changed our structures, the way we've done our promotions, changed our remuneration programs to stabilize that. But at the same time, and I'll get to hopefully a better answer to your question in a second, but there are other factors that have to be accounted for too. What are we doing as a brand to improve the quality? So the products both Stelvio and Julie come out of Cassino in northern Italy. Our quality levels today coming out of the plant are 1/3 the defect rates is what they were just 2 years ago. We, for the first time, have pulled ahead our model year launch. So we're actually launching our 22 model year in July from a production point of view. This is the first time since Alfa Romeo's come back in 2014 where our model years basically align with our competitive set. So we mentioned about leasing. You can imagine what a 4-month difference is in residual value when you're trying to lease vehicles. At the same time of 22 model year, we've reduced our complexity by 70%. So simplify the lineup, simplify the grade strategy, make it easier for the plant to build quality, right? Make it easier for our dealers to understand the products, have the price walks and so forth. So we've done a lot of things in 2021 to build our cost structure and our profitability stability, right? And that goes into our network as well. Now, the chip shortage and everything else that's going on has actually benefited our network up in addition to. But if you look at like JD Power PIN data, our customer facing transaction price for Alfa products is going up faster than the premium segments have. So everyone's had increases in customer facing transaction price because of the shortage. Right. We've gone up even to a greater degree. So it's about stability. And now it's about network engagement. I've got a network that's, I call it bipolar. I've got 140 dealers in my network today, down from a peak of 177, I think 4 years ago. But I've got, the 80-20 rule, right? I got 20% of my dealers selling 80% of my product. And, I've got, 50 dealers, over the last couple of months that have sold 1 or 2 products only. Some have sold 0. So I'm getting out there. I'm going to Florida in a week and a half. I'm going to be visiting all my Southern Florida dealers. I've been to Northern California, Southern California. So, it's engaging with the brand. But the number one thing to ensure the future of Alfa Romeo is to deliver a premium customer experience to our consumers, right? We already have differentiation. There's very few brands that have been consistent for 111 years. Alfa has. If you look back, we have an ebook out there called the 110th anniversary of Alfa Romeo. It's fascinating. It's about that performance DNA, racetrack ready, consistent beauty of design, right? Design and performance together. That DNA alone differentiates us from our German competitors. And that's an exciting thing for me to be able to deliver.
Larry, I want to ask you about this heritage that you're talking about. And the thing I wonder is, does the current generation or the upcoming generation of buyers even know about Alfa Romeo? Mm-hmm. It seems as though, like all this racing heritage, and, you've got the Freccia Rosa is going on, started yesterday in Italy. All of these activities that the older generation certainly may be appreciative of, but what about the young people?
Yeah. It's a great question, Gary. And one of the first things I looked at from a data point of view was, who's our customer today? Who's buying Alfa Romeo in the United States or Canada or Mexico? And ironically, or interestingly, I should say more than ironically, we have the youngest average demographic of any premium brand. We're about 5 or 6 years younger than BMW and Mercedes and Audi. We have a very high affluency. So from an income point of view, it's right on par with their demographics as well. And the people who buy it, they're passionate about design. They're passionate about the emotion tied to their purchase. Now, a lot of people are out there saying the millennials don't care, or the Gen Zs don't care about cars. I don't believe that. We see that through.
Yeah, I don't either, Larry. I know some millennials. They care about cars. They don't want to live in the parents' attic or basement any longer. They want out. So you're right about that. Yeah.
And the Alfistis, the Alfa Romeo fanatics that are out there. So we're a brand, to your point, that sold 18,000 vehicles last year, which, by the way, we were one of a few brands that actually gained volume year over year in 2020 with COVID. But when we've talked to the Alfistis and we looked at our Instagram and Facebook, we have 2 million active, users in both Facebook and Instagram together for a brand that sells 18,000 cars a year. We have a highly engaged owner base, a passionate owner base. Now, to the point about awareness, Gary, it is low. I had a Stelvio Quadrifoglio here. Actually, I've got multiple Alfas parked in my front driveway right now. I go to a gas station and I have people walk up to me all the time asking me what it is. So one of the key things I have to do as the head of the brand is we have to engage and build that awareness. But it's not going to be done through Super Bowl ads. I don't care about Super Bowl ads. This is going to be about going after the enthusiast. I'm going to find where they are. We're activating at Monterey Monterey Car Week, coming up in August. We've got the F1 activation in Austin, Texas in October. So we're going to be really focusing on some experiential stuff going forward.
Larry, can I ask, just quickly picking up on that? It seems like if Stellantis wants to experiment with, different forms of social media or online advertising or different forms of direct engagement, it seems like, Alfa's in a kind of a no-lose proposition on that one. And I just want to, if I'm right or wrong, I'd like to hear you kind of speak to that. To what extent can Alfa be used as a test bed for different approaches to solving the problems you just outlined?
100%, Joe. I've made it very clear to the team. If you come to me with even a suggestion of a Super Bowl ad, you can go work someplace else, right? So for us, when you look at, every manufacturer looks at their cost base, right? So our cost per unit sold, right? So how many marketing dollars am I spending per unit sold? When you only have 20,000 vehicles, no matter what you multiply that by, it's not a big number. So you have to be very tactical and strategic simultaneously. So how effective on a CPM point of view or cost per activation or click can we be? And over the last few months, we've pushed for the folks to look at different ways at how we're going after our digital marketing. And one, our cost effectiveness is getting greater and our reach is getting broader. So to your point, we have nothing to lose, right? And everything to gain. But it requires us to get very smart in the data. And it's not the carpet bombing approach, right? This is the tactical missiles that are going to have to drive the business.
Larry, back when Sergio was running FCA, as you know, they had these big media events and they'd lay out the plans for the whole company. They were pretty clear what Alfa was going to get. I don't know what you can talk about or the like, but for example, one of the plans was to have an A and a B CUV coming around this time frame. There was supposed to be one coming out this year and another one next year. What can you tell us of how you can round out the lineup? Because everything that you're talking about is great, but as you know, you're not going to grow this brand a whole lot with essentially 2 volume models.
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And so I'll put on my historical product planning hat for a minute and talk about core model strategy. So the way I think about markets, if you're going to be successful with any brand in any market in the world, you better focus on the profit pools, right? You need to focus on volume and segments that can drive profit. A segment in the North American market is a financial disaster. B segment is challenged across the board. It's C, D, E, and F is especially in premium is where the money is. So one of the first things Jean-Philippe and Perardo did, and Carlos has confirmed, is locking in a core model strategy. So at least a certain number of years out, we need to lock in a strategy so we can focus on our brand development, our network development, our profitability. So we've got Stelvio and Giulia, and the next generation of those will come in time as well. We've already announced the Tonale is coming to North America in about the next year or so. And that'll be our first electrified Alfa in North America. We'll offer a PHEV version of that vehicle as well. Beyond that, we're in discussions right now. So they have a concept vehicle they've talked about in Europe, which is more of a smaller B. I'm not interested in that kind of product for North America. I don't want to just throw in a warm body to try to make noise. I want to make sure that we're targeting the brand the right way. So we're talking about what comes next. What large D, E segment vehicle could we do? We now have within the Stellantis portfolio a limited number of platforms now, which is good. It's efficient. But we have a variety of multi-energy platforms that can deliver a lot of different kind of products very cost effectively with the right level of performance for the brands, right? So we've got at least four products locked in what I want. And we're working on the 5th and or 6th in the future. So I'm pretty bullish.
Speaking of platforms, I mean, you've got these Jeep Wagoneers and 3-row Grand Cherokees, unit body. I mean, how far would you guys be willing to push this? I mean, if a Grand Wagoneer, something like a Hummer, can be in the $110,000 range, I would think that your brand could go into that. And it sounds to me like Stellantis has some platforms that could take you there.
We absolutely do, but I'm being very, very careful. There's a lot of people in the company that want to offer a product out solution. I want a customer driven solution, right? So I want to make sure, as I think about the future of the Alfistis, where are my Alfistis going when they have a kid or 2 kids or 3 kids? They may want a 3-row Alfa Romeo, right? So once we identify what kind of product we need to meet the needs of our future premium customers, to your point, John, then I have this great backdrop of platforms, powertrains, EV powertrains that will allow me to deliver whatever I want. And that's the beauty of our merged company now, is we have this plethora of hardware solutions that can be applied to the brands.
But then what becomes quintessentially Alfa versus all of the other brands?
Correct. And this is why I talked to Gary about the customer first, right? So we are right now developing what I'll call a revision to the brand want to be on a global basis. We're refining our brand pyramid. We're defining our kind of target audience. And if you were to call Alfa Romeo a boat, what kind of boat would it be? If it was a watch, what kind of watch would it be? So first and foremost is it has to be Alfa Romeo first and foremost. If somebody tells me we can give you a Grand Wagoneer with 60% commonality and we're going to badge an Alfa Romeo, I'll say thank you very much, but that's not going to work for me. Right? This is not about the simple solutions. This is about the challenging solutions. And I think PSA did a great job in Europe. When you look at some of the C segment vehicles we've got, the 3008 for Peugeot versus the DS7 Crossback versus the Grandland for Opel. These are vehicles that people would never know they're built off the same platform or have 40% shared parts, but they do. So the brand differentiation has to be first and foremost, and then everything else comes after that.
So Larry, I'm just curious too. I mean, how much? I saw a picture the other day of an electric Alfa that was actually sort of a resto mod. If somebody's taken a class, you probably know what I'm talking about. You could describe it better than I'm gonna. But at any rate, it was like sort of, I think, a 70s Alfa. It had an electric powertrain. It was cool as heck. Not your product, but I'm wondering to what extent you feel an ability to kind of reach into the brand's design heritage, but then kind of use Alfa as a way to sell electric vehicles or performance premium electric vehicles in this market.
Yeah. So Jean-Philippe's been very clear, Joe, that the brand is moving electric, right? So by next year we'll have electrification for the first time in Alfa Romeo. By the time you go to the next couple cycles of vehicles, when I say the next couple, I mean the next few years, the entire portfolio is moving electrified. And we believe it aligns perfectly with the performance heritage of who we are. I mean, if you look back over our powertrain innovations over the 1920s and 30s and 40s, we had a lot of powertrain innovation. We think we can still do that, right? And what I love about our brand is I can't say which media, but I was in California about a month ago. And one of the journalists I was talking to said, looking at the Giulia and the Stelvio, goes, there's not a straight line on one of these cars. And he said, when I think back of Alfa Romeos over the years, I don't think I've ever seen a straight line on an Alfa Romeo, right? And he said, it's so distinctive and so unique and so who you are. And we think about it kind of like, fluid motion, right? And what I love about it is the brand delivers this kind of unique persona just by looking at it. It looks like it's in motion, even when it's not in motion. And we have a new lead designer that's coming on July 1st for the brand. And it's that DNA that he wants to focus on, and in some ways that might be a simplification, not going more complex. I believe too many designs are now going like way over the top, grill designs, headlamp designs. It's like we're trying to outdo each other. And there's a beauty to simplicity. And I think Alfa delivers that today.
Hey, this might be a good time to take a quick commercial break. Give a shout out to Bridgestone and Magna that make this show possible.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're back on Autoline After Hours, talking with Larry Dominique, the head of Alfa Romeo North America. Larry, a while back you mentioned Carlos Tavares. You must have worked with him directly when both of you were at Nissan. I don't know how much you're interfacing with him now, but I'd just like to get your thoughts about him, because what he did with Peugeot is amazing. Everybody in the industry sat up and paid attention. He turned it around very quickly. He acquired Opel from General Motors. GM threw everything in the kitchen sink at it, trying to turn it around, and bing, bang, boom, he had it profitable within a year. And I'd just love to get some of, your color of what it's like working with Carlos Tavares.
Yeah, so I first time I worked with Carlos was way back in 2003. So he was running corporate and global product planning for NML, for Nissan Motor Limited, when I was running the North American region and then the South American region. So I've worked pretty directly with Carlos on and off since then. As a matter of fact, he ran the Americas for 2 years as well. So he was chairman of the Americas 2009 to 2011, and I was on his management team in Nashville. So when he left Renault and went to PSA, Carlos is an engineer by training as well, and not to again focus on engineers, but he applied some very what I'll call procedural kind of logic to what he did at Peugeot. It was about cost savings, but at the same time, if you pay attention to the metrics, if you look at the pricing power that was gained with the PSA brands in the marketplace against the competitive set, the focus on driving customer satisfaction, driving quality, making it ingrained in the business, and everybody was accountable to those KPIs. It really drove a systemic behavior in the company, John, that I think just allowed everybody to focus. Don't worry about the noise. Focus on the business. Focus on satisfying customers, and we will deliver profitability. And with Opel, we just very quickly applied that same logic. And honestly, the organization was hungry for it. They liked the idea to be able to just focus, on what we're looking at. And visibility, if you don't understand your business metrics all the way down in the organization to what's driving our business, where's your cost structure? Where's your profitability? Where's your customer satisfaction? That drives, in my opinion, all the way down through your organization, kind of momentum. Everybody wants to make it better, but constantly reminding us it's our responsibility to drive that business forward. You can't hide in the woods anymore. If something's not right, it sticks up. But Carlos's point of view was, if something's sticking up, it's not about whack-a-mole and hitting you back down. It's about, how can Gary help me? How can John help me? How can Joe help me fix that problem? You're in this together. And I felt that camaraderie really developed a cross-functional collaboration that I had never experienced in my career. So I think that's a key part of how he's delivered such strong performance.
Can I ask, Larry, I want to just ask a question. I think it's related to what you were just saying. One of the things that I'm sort of struggling to understand is how Stellantis can manage, I think it's 14 different brands and do so successfully. That's just, from outside, that's a lot of complexity. And obviously that's part of your job, is to figure that out. But I'm just curious, how do you see that working?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say to a lot of people, it's one of the biggest questions people ask us, because there's OEMs out there that struggle managing 2.
Right.
Let alone 14. Now, interestingly, we are quite geographically diverse, which helps us in certain markets, but we have heavy overlap in certain places like Latin America and Europe in particular, between the historic brands. Carlos has been very public, saying he's going to give the brands time to define themselves and to prove their value in the organization. And the key to that, well, first of all, is the efficiency we talked about a few minutes ago, the platforms, the powertrains, the engineering synergies that allows us to provide a level of differentiation at a cost structure that makes it affordable, right? Whereas when I was at Nissan, I can tell you how much we would spend to do one program. Stellantis, I think, will be much more efficient. But at the same time, the brand CEOs, the Christian Meunier over Jeep, and Jean-Philippe Imperardo over Alfa Romeo, and Vincent Kobe over Citroën, and Linda Jackson over Peugeot, they have to find the customers that are going to define their brand. And the marketplace is going to help us understand whether there's enough degrees of separation between these brands to make them sustainably independent long-term. And I think it's going to take us a while, Joe, to figure out if it all works. Carlos is committed to letting the brands try, which I think is really, really important. And over time, we'll see what sticks and what might change.
Larry, let me ask you, you were talking about the importance of customer centricity, that, you focus on what the customers basically want. But given your years in product development, you certainly understand that there are a lot of pressures in terms of different people wanting different things. That are internally to the organization, as well as dealers and other parties that are very interested in all of this. How do you stay focused on doing the best for the customer rather than all of these other people who are telling you, no, we want this?
Yeah. I think the first step, Gary, is to make sure that no matter where you are in that process or that sequence of customer satisfaction, that you're sustainable. We've got to make sure the network's sustainable. We have to make sure we're sustainable from a profitability point of view, so we can focus on those elements. Now, those elements themselves. One of the first calls I had 2 days into this role is I asked my network team to pull together all of our dealers on one call. And my first call with them was to introduce myself. The first thing I said, guys, I am not your typical retail guy. That is not my background. I have not lived in the field. I said, my entire career has been to develop the products and processes which allows the sales guys to sell the cars, right? But what I told them is I said, guys, I've looked at the numbers. I've looked at the data. We're not satisfying customers. We are second worst in SSI, and we are the worst in CSI as a premium brand. You know, we have customers that reject us because they don't believe in our quality. They don't believe in our reliability or our safety. Why is that? When I look at the dealership level, when I look at what the customer feedbacks are on the NPS surveys or the CSI and SSI, you know, our dealers aren't delivering a premium experience. And we can make excuses all day long, but it starts with the factory. I've got to deliver quality products at the right price with the right features, you know, to the network to sell that drives demand. The dealers at this point in time, we only have 140 dealers to sell 20,000 vehicles. So we have a small enough network that, you know, I don't have them all yet, but I've got almost all their cell phone numbers now. But I want to be able to call and have discussions for my top CSI performers on the same call with my worst CSI performers and talk about, hey, you know, Joe, what are you doing so great to make such strong CSI performance? And hey, John, you know, you could have learned from Joe, right? So we have to shepherd it, but it starts with a mindset. You know, I have to make sure that everybody on my team, and this is critical. When I came into this role, there was no Alfa Romeo organization in North America. Everything fell under the passenger car brand. So everything was blended. So John worked on Dodge and Alfa. Gary worked on Chrysler and Alfa, you know, and that was network. That was after sales. That was sales and operations. So the first thing we did with Mike Manley and Mark Stewart's concurrence was separate the Alfa brand. So all the people that work in support for Alfa, marketing, sales operations, network, after sales, all work for me now. They can wake up thinking about Alfa Romeo customers, and they can go to sleep thinking about Alfa Romeo customers. And they get 2-3 hours in between, right?
So Larry, you're doing a lot right. Your residuals are improving. Your quality is going up. Your sales, as you mentioned, you gained a little bit of market share there.
Yep.
Let's say you get all this smoothed out. You got some new models coming. Where are the new Alfisti coming from? Where are the real opportunities for you to go and get new customers?
Yeah, it's a good question, John. And it's one I'd say is it's in development, meaning I know who the current customers are. And I'm in a unique position because one of the decisions I made with Jean-Philippe's agreement and Mark Stewart's agreement is I'm not chasing share. I'm focusing on experience and profitability for the network and us, which means if I look at our price dispersion, I want very narrow price dispersion through our network. I want a premium price position as much as I can against our competitive set so we can drive per unit metrics faster than market share. I don't have a production issue. I don't have, you know, boat after boat after boat just coming full of cars that I didn't ask for, right? So we don't have that issue. So we're going to take it as an organic kind of evolution for the brand. If I have a stable network, a stable brand, I can focus on more throughput through the same size network, you know, finding those right customers. So I want to focus on millennials. I know everybody says that, and it's easy to say that. But what I've seen over the last couple of years is there's, you know, premium as a percentage of U.S. market share hasn't decreased. Last year it went up. The average mix of millennials as a percentage of premium buyers is increasing, and within a couple of years is going to pass baby boomers and Gen X's. So I know who I have to go after as a generation. Now I have to find a way to go after the Alfistis that are in there.
So can I ask an impolitic question, getting back to your point about 80/20 on the dealer network? And I'm crummy at math, but you know, it looks like you're selling about 140 some cars on average per dealer. Yep. You know, if you do better this year, it's a little higher, but it's still not a car a day. It's a car every 3 days or something like that. You know where I'm going with this question. I mean, what can you do about that? Because it seems like you'd be better off focusing on, you know, the 20% or the 50 dealers in you know, and and really putting throughput and those people investing in the experience that you clearly think you need.
Yeah. So when I look at our network, Joe, we have engaged dealers for sure. I have, especially look at Southern California, New Jersey, New York, Southern Florida. We have some very high throughput dealers, of course. But I've got some dealers that I believe that are in moderately strong markets, Midwest, Mid-South, areas like Denver, Colorado, which are fairly good premium markets, but we underperform dramatically in those markets. And those points, I'm trying to understand, did the dealer give up on us or did we give up on the dealer, right? So it's about re-engagement, right? It's about coming together and saying, you know what, I've met with some dealers and they said, Larry, you're like the fifth guy who's run Alfa in the last 8 years. How long are you going to stay for, right? And it's a fair question. I said, guys, you have no reason to believe anything I say. It's going to be in the proof of me delivering to you on my promises. One of the first things I said is I'm going to pull ahead 22 model year. We did that. We know we've hit a quality target in casino for the vehicles on the boats now coming over are at a new level of quality performance. So they're going to start gaining confidence with that. So I've asked my field team, and what we recently did in the field team is we used to have sales operations and after sales as separate entities. I've combined them. So now I have a ratio of field operations person to dealers of a ratio of 8-to-1. So now my field team can work as kind of dealer consultants, right? To help them understand how to engage their market. So am I going to be able to be successful with every one of the 140, the portions that's not engaged? I don't know, Joe. There might be some dealers, I'm being very honest with them. So guys, if you want to deliver a premium customer experience and come along on this fun ride we're going to have, let's get on the boat together. Let's run. But if this isn't what you want to do, let me know. I'll find somebody else who will want to do it. But I want to give everybody the opportunity to jump on the ship with us, right? I think it's really important.
So Larry,
go ahead, Gary.
I want to ask you about the, quality's come up a few times so far, mm-hmm. and I want to know how you're going to change perceptions. I mean, I was looking. So you mentioned J.D. Power before. So 2021 vehicle dependability study. Mm-hmm. Alfa's second from the bottom. Okay, now I know that's historical. That's looking over 3 years of ownership. Yep. But okay, if somebody's looking at that chart and seeing Lexus up here and Porsche up here and the other guys up here and you guys way down there, and they're going in to look to buy a new car, I mean, how do you persuade them that the quality that you have now is not going to bite them in the rear end if they get one of your cars?
Yep, it's a great question. And with any consideration set, if you don't have safety, reliability, and quality in that equation, customers will not put you on the consideration set. Interestingly, in the data, for those that have rejected Alfa Romeo for those metrics, Gary, we're still high on their consideration list, which is good news for me. It's at least they're on the sideline looking and paying attention, right? So what I've asked the team to do as we've identified our quality performance, as we start to show in-market validation of that. I mean, if you look at our IQS performance, we've moved from fourth quartile to second quartile in the last 3 years. VDS is different. We're still in the fourth quartile. But from an initial quality standpoint, you can see the improvement. And VDS lags, right? That metric. So as we start to move into those higher quartiles or get closer to the top level of quality, I can start talking about it. And we're going to start focusing more of our direct marketing activities to focus on those foundational elements. Because if you have a picture of a beautiful Giulia, driving down the road, and it's got, number one in IQS below it, the car is going to sell itself. The metric of IQS is going to be the icing on the cake for me. So we definitely have to focus on those foundational elements. And this is why Jean-Philippe at a global level is driving so hard for those metrics to support us.
Larry, do you think electric cars might offer an opportunity? And I ask in this sense, I know Ford's getting a lot of people buying the Mach-E who would never consider a Mach-E. Mm-hmm. You saw they're already up to 100,000 reservations mm-hmm. for the F-150 Lightning. I know Tesla's way above that, but I think the more relevant comparison is to a Ford. It's a traditional automaker. Yep. So do you think there's opportunity for Alfa Romeo, or is that window closing quickly because there's, in another year or two, there's going to be electrics everywhere?
There will be electrics everywhere, but if you can focus on a purely electric portfolio, right? If every vehicle in your portfolio is electrified or pure BEV, which is the purest form of that, your network, the way they sell cars, the way they approach customers, the way we market to customers, the way you service vehicles, the way you plan for infrastructure can be so focused, right? And this has been Tesla's benefit, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many dealers I've talked to that sell Leaf and Titans or Bolts and Silverados, right? And when you have that blended marketplace, dealer marketplace to look at vehicles, especially outside of a state like California or parts of Colorado, you're really searching for a unique customer. You're looking for that unicorn in some of those areas of the country. If you're a focused brand, and I remember a study years ago, John, of a Nissan dealer in Colorado who just lived and breathed the Leaf. He was the #1 Leaf dealer in the country. It ended up being like 40% of his turnover was just Leaf. But he trained his people, he trained his customers, he trained his marketing teams to go after those customers. So I think the purity, as long as I deliver the Alfa DNA that goes with it, they have to be hand in hand or it won't matter. Today, people drive any Alfa Romeo. We have best in class horsepower in our base products, and quadrifolio versions of Stelvio and Giulia are literally like just amazing automobiles from a power to weight ratio and weight balance. So we already deliver that performance expectation, and a move to EV just is an easy transition for us from a performance point of view.
Larry, what is your data? What is your data and your customer insight tell you about the interest among your target customers? I mean, millennials and so on. Their interest in EV, because I have a data-free kind of hypothesis that the affluent members of those generations basically want an electric vehicle almost as table stakes. But I could be wrong, but I'm interested in your take on that.
You know, this is the $1 trillion question, right? It's not a $1 million question, it's a $1 trillion question. The good news is in our data, our customers, the people that move and consider Alfa Romeo, are more open to new technologies. They're more open to digital retail. They're more open to electrification. But to that point, Joe, there's the debate. What is the EV natural demand in North America in 2025, 2027, 2030? Is it 6%, 8%, 12%? I guarantee you California will still over index.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have a national network and you're purely electric, all of a sudden you're gonna weight your sales into the markets that are heavy EV. So the real question is, we have people more aware to it. The good news is the recent data, current EV owners' willingness or propensity to repurchase another EV is increasing rapidly. So people who now have experience with EVs in a positive way are now becoming advocates. And that, I don't know where the hockey stick curve will end up, what year, but at some point we're gonna start accelerating quite rapidly.
So Larry, what does your experience with, say, the Leaf give you in terms of, knowledge or a sense of this whole electrification of the industry?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gary. One of the first things I told my team with Tonali coming is you have to get our team ready to understand the nuances of electrified future. The customers, our dealers have to understand what it's like to sell, to service, to provide insight to, EVs. So the dealers have to be as much EV advocates as we are EV advocates, right? It can't be, I got this EV over here if you want one, right? That can't be the approach. And with Leaf was such a small portion of a Nissan dealer's portfolio. Leaf was the afterthought. I think Bolt at a Chevy dealer was the afterthought. I mean, the average Chevy dealer sold one Bolt every 3 days or something like that. So it has to be centralized mindset around that this is an important part of what we do. It is what we do. And I think that's really gonna drive that kind of culture in the organization.
Larry, changing gears somewhat topic-wise, car sharing. You were working on a program for Peugeot to return to the U.S. using Peugeot cars for car sharing. What are your thoughts about that? I don't think you're looking for car sharing for Alfa Romeo. I got to believe those people want to be in control. It's their car, they drive. But, as you stand back and look at the industry, what do you think are the prospects?
Yeah, it's another great question, John. So we launched car sharing under Free to Move, the brand Free to Move in Washington, D.C. The service has been profitable for almost a year, in DC, which, given the other brands that have been out there that tried over the years that weren't successful, we just launched 2 weeks ago in Portland, Oregon. The plan for this year is to launch 2 more cities in 2021. So we believe we have what I'll call the basic formula. And I say basic formula because the cost structure in DC and the demographic base is a little different than Portland, is different than a potential Denver or Miami or Austin or wherever else we go from there. But what we have learned is how to manage our fleet and our cost of our operations to get that threshold for minimum fleet utilization to break even to a reasonable level, right? Now, DC was simple. 60% of our user base doesn't own a car. And our highest utilization rate is Friday afternoon through Sunday afternoon. They just get out of the city, right? They go to Virginia, wherever they go, they're just getting out of DC. Portland's a little bit different. Now, what we did in Portland, though, is we're launching with Stellantis vehicles for the first time. So mostly Jeep Renegades is what we've got in Portland. We're doing a little trial right now in DC with some consumers looking at the Ami, which is a little electric mobility vehicle we have.
That is a cool car.
I don't know that one. Is that a Peugeot? What is that?
No, in Europe it's a Citroen. It's basically, we call it an urban mobility vehicle. Urban mobility vehicle. It's a little vehicle. It's electric. It has about 50 miles range. But we're just testing it with consumers to see, could this work in the inner city kind of urban transportation? So we're trying to still test new hypotheses. Have no idea whether we're going to end up bringing it here or not. It's a low speed vehicle. It can't go over 25 miles an hour. But it's just, how can we innovate? How can we get the cost of mobility as a service to a point where consumers can afford it and operators can actually make a profit operating them?
So you think there's a future for car sharing?
We do, but what we've learned, John, is you have to be very, very selective where. So you can't just say, I'm going to Chicago or I'm going to some other city and just say it's going to work. You better understand the geography, the density, the car ownership, the inner city cost structure, meaning is the city going to charge you for parking, for example? What are labor rates in that city? And because it's such a fine line today on the profitability equation, you've really got to make sure you're going to have the right utilization rate and the right cost structure.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that, and which is maybe the problem for various kinds of shared mobility, is that in the United States, you could probably count the number of cities that fit all those criteria on 2 hands. Yeah. Maybe 2 hands and a foot, but it's not infinite, right?
Absolutely. And we just launched in Texas as well under the Jeep brand, the My Freedom subscription program too. And I think it's moved to Florida as well. So we're also testing through our dealers this kind of opportunity to be part of the Jeep subscription family, which gives you flexibility when you go to different parts of the country or if you want to try different vehicles. So we're continuing to explore. So we'll continue to probe that. But Carlos's point of view, and I think Mike Manley has adopted this as well, we're not going to just rush out there and over leverage. We're going to test it. We're going to prove the concept, and then we'll scale.
Larry, I want to come back to Alfa's position in the market for a moment. So you're talking about electrifying the lineup. Mm-hmm. So as you're doing this, you're facing Mercedes and BMW and Audi and Lexus and so on that are doing this. But at the same time, you've got companies like Lucid and Fisker coming into the market. You've got Tesla, which is the 300-pound gorilla, well, not 3,000-pound gorilla. How are you going to be able to compete in that space? I mean, what are the things that you're going to do that will separate you from those?
Yeah. So the way we think about the future of retailing, Gary, and those of you that have been interacting with me over the last few years as we were planning Peugeot's reentry, you knew we were looking at some innovative ways to approach, retailing. I believe with our network size, we have the opportunity to work collaboratively with our network to really push the envelope on how we treat customers. And if you really look at Lucid, if you look at NIO on a global basis and see what NIO has done from the standpoint of treating customers, we want to build a distribution model which focuses on the customer And how can we deliver a consistent brand experience, whether it's through the digital tools, whether it's things like concierge pickup and drop off of test drives or service vehicles, but how can I improve the throughput per dealer by giving them the geographic reach? Because we're a relatively light network from a density point of view, even as a premium brand, density wise. So to Joe's point, we're at 143 last year, Joe, specifically. Bookended between Lincoln and Cadillac, actually. But what I want to do is I want to work with our team to find the way we can deliver the right kind of digital experience, brand experience that will help us deliver that experience that will drive higher throughput per dealer and increase that geographic reach. And that's what we're thinking about, Gary. A lot of work to do to get us there, for sure.
So Larry, along those lines, as you know, when Cadillac announced it was going all electric by 2030 and told its dealers, I can't remember what the investment was, several $100,000. About 20% of them dropped out and said, we're not going to go that route. Do you see the same thing maybe happening with your dealer network?
I don't know yet, John. As I mentioned, we have this kind of imbalance between engaged and disengaged. To go to a dealer who's selling one Alfa a month right now and asking him or her to invest a certain amount of money to support some strategy is going to be challenging. But what I want to work with, collaborative with my dealers is I'm the brand. I should be responsible to make sure you have all the tools. And when I say tools, it's not the right color tile on the floor, right? Or the poster on the wall, right? Or even the color of the balloon you're going to fly that weekend. It has to be, we're going to deliver a consistent experience the moment the customer touches the brand. The first time they're exploring through third parties or through our site or through an application, flowing through to the retail process. If you look at the industry today, we tend to stop right there. All of these online shopping tools, the Roadsters who just got absorbed by CDK and some of the other companies, they're working to digitize the retail process. You have back-end providers, Cox with Xtime and other ones that are delivering some digital tools on the back end, but they're tools. They're not experiences. I want to be able to have the Alfa Romeo customer feel like they were delivered a customized experience. Amazon does that. Alibaba does that. Even Starbucks does that. Once they get to know you, John, you want that soy latte with a double shot? We have it ready for you. So what we heard from customers when we studied Peugeot, and I think it translates very well into Alfa Romeo, customers want that customized experience. It's no longer about just having apps on your phone. It's what does that app provide me? And we heard that very clear through our research. And when you're spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for an automobile, it magnifies that expectation. So this is my commitment to the brand. We're going to go there.
Well, we're almost at the top of the hour here. Maybe this is a good point to wrap it up. But Larry, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been a fascinating discussion. Really good stuff. A lot of good information in this.
Oh, my pleasure, John. I love talking about our industry in general. And now I have a brand I can just wrap my head around and really focus on, which is really exciting. And as you guys know me, you guys have known me for a long time. I'm not looking for the next best thing. I want a building and an expansion of Alfa Romeo and driving satisfaction to be a bit of a legacy, for how I sunset at some point.
Oh, come on.
Then I'll join your panel.
It's like there you go. It's like the Rolling Stones. It's like the Rolling Stones. No one gets out.
That's right.
True. That's true. No, but it was a pleasure, guys. Always great to see you.
It's good
Yeah,
seeing you,
Joe, great having you on the show too.
Thanks, John. Gary,
Thanks,
Larry,
John.
good to see you all. Good.
Okay.
Great. You guys
Well, good.
too.
Thanks, everybody, and special thanks to everybody who's tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Magna.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.